Occupancy is based on the use of a building or structure or a portion thereof. Some buildings may have multiple occupancies. Occupancy types are found in Chapter 2, Definitions of the Fire Code under Occupancy. The proper application of the Fire Code depends on making the appropriate classification of occupancy. This may already be determined, but occupancy type may change when a new business takes over a space. You should be familiar with all 10 occupancy types. A handy tip for remembering occupancy designations is that the group name corresponds with the type of occupancy. For example, Group A is assembly, or places people may assemble as an audience, to consume food or drink, or for worship. Group B is business. Group E is educational, and so on. Occupancy types will vary throughout your jurisdiction. To become familiar with different types of occupancy, let's look at a few examples of occupancy classifications you may recognize in the state of Utah. Group A, or assembly occupancy, covers buildings where people may assemble. It is divided into 5 subgroups. Group A1 includes buildings, usually with fixed seating, intended for production and viewing of movies or the performing arts. A1 includes any type of theater, symphony, or concert hall, as well as television and radio stations where an audience is admitted. Group A2 includes buildings intended for food and/or drink consumption, including but not limited to banquet halls, nightclubs, restaurants, cafeterias, and bars. Group A3 is comprised of facilities intended for worship, recreation, or amusement, as well as other places of assembly that don't fall within any of the other groups. In addition to churches, A3 can include arcades, bowling alleys, gyms, swimming pools, and indoor tennis courts without spectator seating, courtrooms, funeral parlors, lecture halls, and libraries and museums, just to name a few. Group A4 occupancy includes facilities intended for viewing of indoor sporting events, such as arenas, skating rinks, swimming pools, and tennis courts that do include spectator seating. Group A5 occupancy covers venues where you may participate in or view outdoor activities. These include amusement parks, bleachers, grandstands, rodeo arenas, or stadiums. Group B, business occupancy, includes the use of a building or structure or portion thereof for office, professional, or service-type transactions. These include, but are not limited to, colleges and universities, airport traffic control towers, banks, barber and beauty shops, car washes, laboratories, motor vehicle showrooms, post offices, professional offices, and radio and television stations. Also included in Group B are any rooms or spaces used for assembly purposes with an occupant load of less than 50 persons and accessory to other occupancy. Group E is educational occupancy and includes the use of a building or structure or portion thereof by 6 or more persons at any one time for educational purposes through the 12th grade. These include elementary and middle schools, junior high and high schools, some educational daycare facilities, and certain accessories to places of worship. Group F occupancy type is comprised of factories and encompasses buildings or structures used for assembling, disassembling, fabricating, finishing, manufacturing, packaging, repair or processing operations that are not considered high hazard or storage. Group F is broken down into 2 subgroups. F1 includes moderate hazard factory industrial uses. F2 includes fabrication and manufacturing of non-combustible or low-hazard materials. F1 factories can include, but are not limited to, the production of aircraft, appliances, automobiles, bakeries, bicycles, boats, cameras, clothing, electronics, engines, furniture, machinery, optical goods, printing or publishing, and shoes. F2, or low-hazard facilities, might include brick or masonry, ceramic products, foundries, glass products, gypsum, ice, and metal products for fabrication and assembly. Group H is high hazards and includes any manufacturing, processing, generation, or storage of materials that constitute a physical or health hazard. The high hazards of Group H are divided into 5 subgroups. Group H1 covers buildings and structures that contain materials that pose a detonation or explosion hazard. Group H2 includes buildings and structures that contain materials that pose a deflagration hazard or hazard from accelerated burning. Group H3 takes in buildings and structures that contain materials that readily support combustion or pose a physical hazard. Group H4 includes buildings and structures that contain materials such as toxic chemicals or corrosives that are health hazards. Group H5 covers semiconductor fabrication facilities and comparable R&D areas in which hazardous production materials or HPM are used. Group I is institutional. Buildings or structures where people are physically unable to leave without assistance. Group I is divided into 4 subgroups. Group I1 is for buildings where more than 16 people reside on a 24-hour basis under supervision and care. This might include alcohol and drug treatment centers, assisted living facilities, and convalescent facilities. Group I2 takes in buildings used for medical care on a 24-hour basis for more than 3 persons who are not capable of self-preservation, such as hospitals and nursing homes. This number is different from the number found in your inspector's guide due to a change made when Utah adopted the code. Group I3's occupancy covers buildings in which more than 5 people are under restraint or security. This group includes, but is not limited to, correctional centers, jails, prisons, reformatories, and detention centers. Group I4 is for care facilities for 3 or more persons of any age who receive custodial care for less than 24 hours by persons other than a parent, guardian, or relative. This includes care for both adults and/or children. As with Group I2, this number is based on the adopted code and varies from the number found in your inspector's guide. Group M is mercantile, which is the use of a building or structure or a portion thereof for the display and sale of merchandise. Group M encompasses department stores, drugstores, markets, gas stations, retailers or wholesalers, and sales rooms. Group R is residential and consists of places used for sleeping that are not included in Group I. Group R is divided into 4 subgroups. R1 includes places one may stay overnight on a temporary basis, such as transient hotels, motels, and boarding houses. R2 covers residential occupancies containing sleeping units or more than 2 dwellings, where the occupants are primarily permanent. Apartment buildings, dorms, non-transient boarding houses, hotels, and motels may be considered R2. R3 takes in anything not R1, R2, or R4 or I, where residents are primarily permanent. This could include certain boarding houses, duplexes, and care facilities with 4 or fewer occupants, according to the current adopted code. R4 occupancy covers buildings for more than 5 but not more than 16 persons, excluding staff, who reside on a 24-hour basis in a supervised residential environment in which they receive custodial care. This could include certain rehabilitation or treatment centers, assisted living facilities, group homes, or convalescent facilities. Group S is storage and involves the use of a building for storage. Low or moderate hazards are included in Group S, but all high hazards are relegated to Group H. Group S is comprised of 2 subgroups. S1 includes buildings occupied for moderate hazard storage. Some examples may include an airplane hangar or motor vehicle repair garage, or buildings used to store apparel, books, bags, baskets, belting, glues, grains, linoleum, lumber, mattresses, shoes, tires, upholstery, or wax candles. S2 is low-hazard storage and covers storage of non-combustible materials. This can include asbestos, beverages up to and including 16% alcohol, cement in bags, dairy products in non-waxed coated paper, dry cell batteries, electrical coils and motors, empty cans, food products, glass, gypsum board, glass bottles, meats, metals, mirrors, parking garages, porcelain and pottery, stoves, washers, and dryers. Group U is utility and miscellaneous and includes buildings and structures of an accessory nature and those not otherwise classified in any specific occupancy. Group U can include agricultural buildings, barns, carports, fences over 6 feet, grain silos, greenhouses, private garages, retaining walls, sheds, stables, tanks, and towers.